welcome to another Flashback Friday, during which we look at one of Music Theater Wichita's former shows. We got a lot of calls from our friends this week saying that this was the day we absolutely should look at the show Ragtime, which we are only too happy to do. I think it's one of the best shows ever written, and certainly one of the productions I'm proudest of. After the terrible events of 9/11, we put together a following summer season that was all about America, and we were thrilled when the rights to that brand new show, Ragtime, became available for us to do that year. But let's back up. It was 1970 when E.L. Doctorow decided as an author he needed new inspiration. So he was sitting looking at the walls of his family's home in New Rochelle, wondering what it must have been like to live in that house when it was new in 1906. He made up ideas about a family that might have lived there, and that started him thinking about a story that he could write that would combine fictional characters with real historic ones and look at all of the events of that era. That became the book Ragtime, which came out in 1975. It was filmed in 1981 as a non-musical, and this should have been so good, but it's a rather disappointing movie after a very good start. It's still worth seeing, but the musical did so much better by it, and Doctorow loved the musical after being disappointed in the film. The musical, like the book, deals with three fictitious families that are trying to make their way in America at the turn of the century. The family that lived in the house, very white, very privileged. In our production, they were played by Todd Thurston of the Broadway cast as father, the luminous Darcy Roberts as mother, Chris Peluso as her younger brother, and the youngest son of the family was played in a remarkable performance by Matthew Vines. Some of the characters they encounter who change their lives include a wonderful bunch of Harlem musicians led by Coalhouse Walker, David Jennings in our production, who falls in love with Sarah Brown Eyes, played by Montego Glover before she became a Tony-nominated Broadway actress. The Jewish immigrant Tata, played by Bruce Wynant of the Broadway cast, has come to America with his younger daughter, believing they will have a wonderful, fresh life. These fictional characters interact with such historical characters as Emma Goldman, Booker T. Washington, Harry Houdini, Evelyn Nesbit, and Henry Ford. During the course of the story, these separate families all ultimately merge into one. And the mother particularly has a wonderful journey of realization, how we must move forward and how we have to learn and improve on what we've done before. It was produced in a spectacular production originally. It was worked out in Toronto, Canada by their producer Garth Drabinsky. The wonderful score by Stephen Flaherty and lyrics by Lynn Ahrens embody the best of the era. They're passionate, they're historically evocative without really being songs from that era. And the book by Terrence McNally takes all of these events and condenses them into something that we can understand and enjoy and empathize with across the course of the evening. In the story, Coalhouse Walker suffers a terrible injustice, and the rest of the musical is his search to get justice for what has happened to him and how that brings the other characters into the story. I saw the show first in its American debut, which was out in Los Angeles. And then when it opened on Broadway, with just a few changes and a couple differences in cast, this was the Broadway production. I saw it 4 times. I would have gone many more if I could have. It was staged beautifully by Frank Galati. It was choreographed brilliantly by Graciela Danielle. And for our production, we were fortunate to have Joe Licaro, whom we had known as an actor, but who was in the Broadway cast of Ragtime and turned out to be a marvelous director, put it together for us, and his associate Rusty Mowry restaged Graciela Danielle's brilliant original staging. We had a cast of 79 and an orchestra of 27, and it was glorious, as you'll see from the clips we're sharing this afternoon. The opening number of Ragtime is quite brilliant. it shows the different characters. First we see the all-white family, and then we spin over to Harlem where we see the energy of the black community. And then we see the immigrant Tata coming in with a bunch of Jewish immigrants who are all seeking asylum in this country. And they initially merge into a large mass of humanity, all intermingled. And then they start looking at each other, and then they start pulling back, and they start vying for space and eyeing each other somewhat warily. And they group together, and you see them in their outfits. They're the very white people in New Rochelle, and the Jewish immigrants in their blue robes, and the crimson and scarlet colors of the Harlem community, vivid and bright. I think it wasn't until the fourth time I'd seen the show that I watched that opening number, which always moved me to tears. But it was on the fourth viewing that I saw New Rochelle in white, immigrants in blue, blacks in red, red, white, and blue. It's America. The America we want, where all voices can be heard and we can work together in harmony. Enjoy.